recording when you're ready.
Sorry, it changed the window and I lost all my buttons.
No worries. No rush.
Yeah, it does that on, I think it does like a auto hide, which is really annoying.
Yeah, it changed it to, I cannot get it back to the normal. Okay, let me unshare this
No worries.
and then I'll
Yeah,
start recording and then I'll share.
That works fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Recording in
that,
progress.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It's January 22nd, 2025, and this is a public meeting of the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, Settlement and Policy Subcommittee meeting, and it is our first meeting of 2025. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us in 2025. Let's go ahead and get started. And we can go to the next slide. And I think we're going to get started with introductions. So Kip, I'll pass it over to you and you can just roll with it.
Yeah, sure. My name is Kip Silverman. I use he, him pronouns. I am co-chair of the Settlement and Policy Subcommittee. At least that's what it is at this time until we figure out if we're going to restructure things. I'm happy to see you all here. I'm just going to start at the top. I'll hand it over to Kyle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kyle Robinson. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a member of the Settlement and Policy Subcommittee. And I'm going to pass it to the next PCCEP member I see, which is Carrie Driver. Hey, Carrie.
Hi, Kyle. Thanks. My name's Carrie Driver. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a member of the Community Engagement Subcommittee. I'll pass it to Ashley.
Thanks, Carrie. Yep, Ashley Schofield. I like to use she, her pronouns. I am currently the co-chair for the full PCCEP, Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing. So thanks everybody for being here. Viva, would you like to go next?
Hi, I'm Viva Campo. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm part of the committee, and this is my first subcommittee, so I'm determining which subcommittee to be a part of. Let's see how to get to gallery view, and I will kick it over to Adelia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Odelia Zuckerman. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a youth member of PCCEP and the co-chair of the Community Engagement Subcommittee. I think that's all for us. So if city folks want to introduce yourselves.
I can go first. Hi, everybody. Stephanie Howard. I am in the Deputy City Administrator's Office for the Public Safety Service Area. Glad to see you all.
Good evening, folks. Mary Claire Buckley, she, her, and I'm for the Portland Police Bureau.
Elizabeth Perez, she, her. I'm also with the Deputy of the Public Safety group for the city of Portland. Good to see you all.
We're all getting used to the new form of government. I am Sarah Ames, she, her pronouns, the Deputy City Attorney.
I'm Dory Grabinski, PCCEP Program Manager. And Monitor and DOJ, feel free to jump in here too.
Greetings all. This is Antoinette Edwards. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a team member of the Independent DOJ Monitoring Team Community Specialist. And it's just so good to see you all. And Elizabeth, you get to be brand new. We all moving. Okay.
Hello,
Hi,
everyone. Oh,
my
go
name.
ahead.
Oh, sorry, Jose. I'm Jared Hager. I'm with the United States Department of Justice.
Hello, everyone. Hoping to arrive at my destination and be on camera soon. Jose Che Ramirez, member of the Independent Monitoring Team. Great to be here.
Very cool. And I think that's the end of it, but other folks, please introduce yourselves in the chat if you'd like to.
And I saw that Noel joined.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, okay.
Noel, are you on mic yet or connected to audio?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. I don't have everything quite set up yet. I might have to hop out and then hop back in. But I'm Noelle Cuthair. I'm a newer member here on PCCEP, and I'm really glad to be here and look forward to hearing from all of you tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, and community members in the chat, as I'm seeing people starting to do. Awesome. Great. I do think that's everybody now, and we can get those slides again, please. I think we can jump ahead to our community agreements. And Viva, would you like to read our community agreements?
Sure. First of all, listen actively and respectfully, share airtime, be present and open to new information and perspectives, assume positive intent, respect each other, respect the group, share your own truth, communicate directly, honestly, and respectfully, ask questions to clarify, call out bias, and be okay with ambiguity.
And next slide. And I'll pass it over to Kip for the updates section and well, to do the overview and the updates.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to apologize in advance. I've been talking a good chunk of today, so my voice goes in and out, but I've got hot coffee with me. Hopefully that'll help. Can we bring the slide back up? Not seeing it yet. I can also speak to, oh, there we go. I was going to say I could speak to things off my phone. I have a copy locally if need be. So we're going to start out with doing some updates, including the presentation PCCEP made to Judge Simon. I think it was the 9th, 7th. Dates not in my head, but we're also going to work on, we're going to try 7th. Thank you, Dan. We're also going to do a couple, or at least one new thing today to try to allow PCCEP members and community members to talk about things that they want to bring to our attention, which I really like the idea. So thank you, Dory, on that. We're also going to do a review of our recommendation draft and hopefully finalize it on the recommendations on updating the official record on the Portland Police Bureau website about communications around the Normandale shooting. So we have some aspects of that we have a few different drafts that hopefully we can combine and have an open discussion about and come down with a come up with a final recommendation. And then at the end, of course, we'll have time for the open public comment period. Yeah, can we get go to the next slide, please? Do you want to speak to this story or should I?
Yeah, I might as well cover this. This is all pretty much internal affairs, so to speak. Internal PCCEP affairs, that is. So Yeah, we have a lot going on, just like not even content related, just piece of kind of logistics. So we need to get elections done. We have a retreat on the books. And as a part of that retreat and possibly some other meetings along the way, it's been discussed, maybe rethinking a little bit of how PCCEP is currently approaching its subcommittees, whether it be structurally or what the topics are. Everything's kind of on the table. That's a normal thing that PCCEP has done periodically over the years, is kind of revisit how those work. And then we also need to get some amici trainings on the books as well. We're currently working with MHA to schedule a film screening, which is exciting. So yeah, that's all gonna happen. You know, a lot of it's in February, some early March. And so we have, so you can go to the next slide. So we currently have, go back one, please. We currently have our full committee election scheduled for next week, but it has been suggested that we hold them later. So I kind of laid it out here for you all to sort of decide between those options. I think either one would be fine. It's just up to you how you want to move forward with that. So I just wanted to provide a little space here. I think the majority of you are in attendance right now, so we could just kind of make the call and move forward as you see fit. Anyone have initial thoughts or preferences?
I like the idea of doing it post-retreat. I'm open to be persuaded, but I feel like that'll be an opportunity to kind of get to know and understand people better and be able to nominate or support people if they want to run. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Kyle. Other thoughts? Support for that? Similar feelings?
Yeah, I think that's a interesting perspective also, that we do have a lot of new members and we haven't had a lot of opportunity to interact. My thoughts thinking, excuse me, I'm sorry, on it was that it would be good if we are going to restructure the committee somewhat, it'd be good to understand what the restructuring is going to be, what the subcommittees are, so we can kind of determine what suits us best and where we think we can do the most good. I guess is the way I'm thinking about it. So waiting till later makes sense to me, but also want to acknowledge the work that Ashley's been doing primarily solo for a pretty long time, and it's a lot. So I get it that it's putting it off for another 3 to 4 weeks. But yeah, in my head, it kind of makes sense to wait till after the retreat.
Heard. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I'll chime in. Well, just to be clear, it's all been a team effort as the chairing of the committee. So I don't think it's been a big burden. I think all the other co-chairs of subcommittees also carry the burden of, and I think that's part of like why we want to maybe think about how to restructure our committees and just like our working flow. And so I'm really excited for that conversation. I know a couple of us had that last week when we met impromptu before going to the council meeting and ran through some ideas. So with that said, I just think I think it would be good to at least definitely hold the subcommittee elections after the retreat, so that we can, really sort of think about that restructure and have sort of all that input on there. I'm either for holding the full committee election for either next week or into February, but I feel like people have been planning it for it next week, and so I don't know if so those who like maybe want to do full committee, if we have the elections next week, and say they don't win or whatever, or don't advance, and they could have the opportunity to learn more about the subcommittees, and then we could have those elections later. So I don't know, that's probably what I would lean towards, like the option one, I guess, that you have here listed.
I'll add to, I think just as a newer member, one of the newest members, my exposure to other folks on the committee has been pretty limited, other than just a couple meetings. There's one subcommittee that hasn't happened yet. So unless I missed, there's emails that I could have missed sometimes, but I don't think I saw any like campaigning. So I think there hasn't really been any exposure for me to really understand kind of what values are important or what people's goals are by putting their name forward. And so I think just all the more exposure would be helpful for me. Otherwise, for me, kind of voting right now seems like there's some people I haven't spoken to yet. So that's kind of where my perspective is.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I guess with what Viva said, that makes a lot of sense. I think if like it doesn't seem like the co-chair will have co-chair will have much work to do over the next 3 weeks. So like if we could pause it and people could get more information, then maybe that would be best. Yeah.
I agree with all the points made. I think it would be great to have it next week, but especially since we're reconsidering the model for the subcommittees, it makes sense for me it makes sense to me that people have more time to consider how the subcommittees would affect their decision about which position to run for and how to see the overall role that they'd play in both positions. So having it after the retreat is something I feel makes more sense now that we've talked it through.
I'll just chime in and kind of echo what everyone else has already said. I think it makes the most sense for the new members to be able to gather information and make a really well-informed decision. If we push it out a little bit further, at least after the retreat. So I'm gonna go ahead and side with that sentiment there.
Cool.
I wanted to just hop on here and say that I agree with what everyone is saying. I think it would be best to wait till after the retreat, just so that way we have time to gather some more information and make an informed decision.
Great. Anyone we haven't heard from, or was that everyone? I'm not in gallery view, so I feel like that may have been all of our PCCEP members. So that's pretty resounding, which I love to hear. And everyone making similar points. I would say, yeah, let's absolutely make that change. And let's also, as a group, think about what we need to do to get you all the information that you need, especially with so many new members on board. Yeah, and thankfully we do have a retreat coming up, so we have lots of in-person time, personal time, so you can get to know each other better and choose those positions. But I think there also may be some more structured opportunities we can provide you with to help you get there. So if anyone has ideas to that end, please let me know. Okay, cool. So let's do that. And then part 2 here. We can move to the next slide, please. All right, so as mentioned, one of the things, so PCCEP had some meetings in the fall, including like sort of a mini retreat. And one of the things that came up was this possibility of revisiting how subcommittees are working. Those of you who have been with us for a long time will remember that we restructured our subcommittees about 2 years ago. And I think now we're gonna take a look at how that's been working, what maybe can be done better, maybe different ways to divide the work. Like I said, everything's on the table. But I know many members of the public are who are with us tonight have been kind of with us on that journey for the last 2+ years, plus years. So if this is kind of a brief opportunity for you to share any input you have with the group about what you think they should consider when they start to have this discussion at their upcoming retreat. And that retreat isn't necessarily the end all be all about what will happen, but it's going to be sort of that generative discussion about the direction they're going to move in. But yeah, we just wanted to provide a little space here for you to share any input you'd like them to consider. And of course, you can also email it to us or however you want to communicate it. But members of the public, do you have any thoughts you'd like us or like PSUB to consider in terms of subcommittee structure or function? I see Dan's hand.
Hi. Hello, everybody. I have my camera on tonight. Very rare. I've been saying at the last couple of meetings that you've been doing a lot of meetings that are kind of informal, so it kind of gets very hard for the community members to feel like we're engaged, which is part of your name. And hoping that the restructure doesn't lead to more meetings that the public can't get to. I mean, I think it'd be great if you have those meetings, if you host them, even if it's the last minute for public to come to, if you don't treat it like a full public meeting with a 24-hour notice. It'd be nice to have the ability for the public to watch and be part of your deliberations to the extent that you allow us. So that's one thing. Another thing is that the old subcommittee structure, it was very clear which subcommittee you were at and what the content was and how that related to the name of the subcommittee. And these days, I kind of just keep showing up on Wednesdays, and whatever you're talking about, that's fine. I just write PCCEP at the top of my nose, and I don't even remember which subcommittee I'm at. I'm not sure what the reason is for that, but it just seems less clear now. I don't know if that's part of what you're planning to look at as well. Lastly, and I don't know if this is part of the discussion because you didn't mention it, but you canceled last week's meeting because it was interfering with a city council meeting, which is going to be the third Wednesday of every month because it's written in the charter now. So, it used to be that your meetings were, at least your subcommittee meetings were on Tuesday nights, and then maybe the main meeting could be like later in the month on a Wednesday. But it's also possible the city council could come up with more Wednesday night meetings that you want to go to. So I don't know if you want to look at changing the day. And I'm leaning on Tuesday because I have lots of meetings on Mondays and infrequent, but sometimes meetings on Thursdays to go to. But that's just a thought too. Thank you very much.
The main goal is the desire for more clarity and distinction between those groups. Yes, Barb.
Hi there. What I'm thinking is I know you guys are limited by staff to the number of subcommittees or the number of meetings per month you can have or some kind of, don't get carried away with the number of subcommittees because we don't have staff for it kind of thing. But I do really like the settlement and policy subcommittee and what KIP had aimed for it to be and do. And as a community member though, I don't honestly know how much the settlement and policy committee worked on what's being presented today, for example. But that's not like super important, but liking the sound of it. I was never real thrilled with the community engagement group because I felt like everybody was supposed to be involved in community engagement. And I wasn't really sure. It's not like you guys run that many events per year or anything. And now I'm hearing that the monitor is supposed to be helping with community engagement for PCCEP, maybe not. And there were some other subcommittees that PCCEP used to have, and I realized they had too many, but they did have a behavioral health subcommittee, and crap, I can't think of the other one that they had. And then they had a steering committee that was just made up of the two co-chairs and then the co-chairs from each of the subcommittees, or one of the co-chairs, depending. And they met monthly, even in public meetings, to set the agenda. Anyway, that's what I've got to say from my memory of the past, so that people might want to know that.
Thank you for both of those comments. Anyone else? I'll just say sort of the crux of it is, yes, the desire to have more distinction between the subcommittees, so they're separate work groups. And they're not sort of this general meeting feeling, but that PCCEP doesn't run into the issue of, well, does it fall into the category of behavioral health, or could this also be under the previous two were racial equity and behavioral health? And so the pivot away from those 2 years ago was this conundrum that kept coming up, which people felt that very frequently or always both of those issues were present in topics that were being examined. And so that's sort of the thing that one of the things being explored. Babs?
Hi, I stepped away for a minute. So is this the time to make a comment or ask a question?
Either is fine.
Okay, thank you very much. Glad to be here. Babs Manelli, a lifelong Portland resident. I remain cautiously optimistic about the transition that we're going through with the new city council members, the new mayor. The mayor has already noted that he has established a relationship with the chief of police, whose name I'm spacing out right now. But he did underscore that he has already done that. So I don't know if this is the appropriate time or place. Stephanie Howard, of course, has been at these meetings in the past, but if I understood correctly, given the new government new structure, she noted a different position currently. Is it possible during this meeting, hi Stephanie, to have her describe for us exactly what that means, exactly what her role will be? And let me know if this isn't the right time.
Yeah, I think we probably would want to save that towards the end, assuming Stephanie, can you stay till the end? Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I think that would be great. Thanks everyone for hanging on to that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
But we're lucky to still have Stephanie in the meeting with us. We're grateful she's here. Okay, so I think with that said, some good input gathered here. And again, if you're here and you heard this discussion, you have thoughts for us, please, someone put the PCCEP email in the chat. Feel free to send us an email. You can contact us on social media as well. Okay, so let's move on back to the updates, please. And Kip, I'll hand this over to you, I think. Oh, yeah, this should be just some quick ones here. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm assuming we don't want to read through the entire recommendation or statement that we made to Judge Simon. It is available online. I have a link to it, but I can speak to it. I want to acknowledge that Carrie Driver did almost all the work on it, so I really appreciate her preparing that for us. What uh, what had happened is she got ill. I had agreed to go to the meeting to be moral backup and wound up doing the presentation. We restructured a couple things during the meeting, but the gist of it, the main point that we presented to Judge Simon was that part of the settlement agreement, the city had agreed to provide enough support, including a dedicated person to help with community outreach, communication, coordination, and that they have not met that level of agreement yet. We're grateful that we have Dory, and we're grateful we have Liz part-time, and Sean, thank you for doing Liz coverage. But to the point that Barb made earlier, and other feedback, which I think Barb had made in the hearing as well, is that as we try to get through the months of facilitating meetings, making sure we're hearing the community, we're working on recommendations based on input, having town halls, all these other things, and getting the word out to everybody. It's a lot of work for the current city staffing, and it's just not enough. So we're definitely not, we don't feel we're living up to the a requirement of what the settlement agreement is intending us to do, and B, the city needs to make sure that they staff PCEP appropriately so that we can continue doing the work that we're doing, that we can be as effective as we possibly can. And given in the new city structure that there's phenomenal opportunity that has not previously existed to engage with different communities, both independently, and that was the main point that we wanted to make also. We are an independent committee, and we sit in the middle of all these other points of contact and information and recommendation. But with the new city council structure, we have incredible opportunity to really reach people that we generally do not reach or who are not aware of what we're doing. So that extra staff member is going to be critical. I'll add a note that I did not have the data when we did the presentation, and I wish I had that. I think when we have local elections here in Portland, we have pretty phenomenal turnout. District District 1, far East Portland, had by far much lower turnout than the rest of the districts did. And a lot of that is likely due to the inability to have pertinent information in front of them to understand how things are working. There's a technological divide that's been quantified and qualified by the city before. For us to be as effective as we can, we really need that extra staff person. And I believe it was pretty well received by the judge. Other folks in the courtroom seemed to agree with what we were saying. The city said that they've heard us and are working on it. I don't know how that plays out, but that's the gist of the conversation that we had. And did I represent that well, Dory and Odelia? since you guys were there. And if you have any questions, let me know, please.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I think you captured that well, and I think we are moving in the right direction to make that happen. And I hope that I can share positive developments, confirmation of those developments with you all soon. Yeah, but I think reasons to be optimistic for sure.
Cool. Yeah, the only thing I'll add is that I learned that Judge Simon might need help with his printer. So,
great.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, and let's just keep rocking here, because yeah, we are.
Uh-oh, did we lose Dory?
She looks frozen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she
it
looks
looks
frozen.
like it's frozen to me too. So sorry,
Can we go to
everyone.
yeah, no problem. Can we
I'll
go
move to the next slide.
Yes.
Yeah. And I
Oh,
can
there you go. Dory's back.
Okay, cool.
Oh. Am I back?
You
are
dropped out
back.
briefly. Now you're back.
Okay, yeah. So I just said let's do the last update.
Okay. So did we want to talk about the City of Portland news and the budgetary issues?
Yeah, you can go ahead and cover that if you want, or I could just read through it if you'd like.
No, I can talk to it a little bit. And initially, the city thought that there was about a $20 to $25 million shortfall out of the, I think, $8.2 billion budget that we have slated for the next fiscal year. And then shortly after that, it was reported that there might be as much of $100 million budget shortfall. So there's, as it says here, in previous budget cycles, police and fire have been held harmless from cuts, but that might change. There was some spirited conversation last week in City Council about where discretionary dollars should be taken from. And there was a lot of testimony saying that it cannot be taken or should not be taken from public safety, given all the challenges that we have. So I think this is a phenomenal opportunity for everyone on in this meeting to reach out to their new district representatives and the new mayor, and let them know that especially programs like Portland Street Response and Chat are currently underfunded, and they need to be overly funded, and that there should be maybe some cuts looked at for areas that can be cut without impacting public safety and equitable outcomes for the people in our city who are struggling most. So a little bit of flavor commentary on that, but that's where my head goes when I see shared sacrifice. I feel like a lot of people in this city are already doing a shared sacrifice regardless. So I'm hoping they won't be impacted more so.
Yeah, in any case, just flagging this piece of news for folks, as it is a big piece of city news and something that particularly the bottom piece here could potentially come on PCCEP's radar from a community engagement perspective. This might be something that PCCEP is thinking about later on, potentially hearing from different communities around Portland about what types of services are important to them, or where like helping facilitate that sort of input about these big decisions that are going to be made. So just putting this on your radar as something to consider, and a big thing, big conversations that are happening around the city right now. Okay, Kip, I'm going to propose we skip this new thing that I thought might be a good idea and try it another time, because
Sure.
we are already at 6:45.
Sounds good to me.
Cool. So Sean, if you could skip us ahead 2 slides here. Thank you. Alrighty. So that's it for updates. A lot of good updates. It's, we're not even through January. A lot going on here. I don't know if you all noticed. Okay, so now we're gonna take a look at a recommendation draft that PCCEP has been talking about since the fall. I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with it, as we do have some newer members, and people have been variously involved in this conversation. Also, PCCEP, I'm gonna look to you for guidance as to which version of the draft you would like to review, because there are 4 of them. Anyone have thoughts? 4 of them that kind of emerged right before this meeting started, so we're kind of flying blind here.
I would like to propose that Odelia's organization of the original one is probably a great start.
Okay, I do think that version is a good convergence. Everyone okay with that? I don't know if everyone's looked at all of them. All right, I'm gonna go with that.
I wanted to, looking over the versions too, like I think Odelia's is really good, but I think, it kind of, I would like to go through it again and kind of look over the semantics of it. Just to like have time to comment on it a little more.
Oh, sure, that's exactly
I know it's
what.
not like, yeah, I know it's not like being submitted right now, but I do like it. I think maybe just like a little more clarity is important with it, with like I said, the semantics that are being used. But yeah, it's good. Thank you.
Great. Okay, yep, so I will pull up that version. Let me just get straight on. Sean,
we
you
wanna
can stop sharing.
explain how should we explain how we like do?
Yeah, do you want to do that, Odelia, while I look for the right version?
Okay. Basically, we try to come to like a meeting with a draft-ish of a recommendation, so, and hopefully people have had time to read it, but I sent it 2 hours ago, so that's not really fair, but it basically took like the stuff that Ashley was working on and just reordered it, so a lot of the writing is the same. But we try to like really have like do one solid read through so we all are on the same page, and then like go through it paragraph by paragraph, and like the wording and grammar stuff isn't as important right now, but it's really about like nailing down the content and making sure it's all like saying the same message and we all agree on it. And I don't think we're gonna vote on it today anyway, so it's not like we have to like be 100%, and then we can continue doing like smaller stuff just on the document, but really making sure we're aligned on like the messaging and that the words are saying what we want them to say. And then Ashley, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Amelia. Sorry, I'm trying to get dinner done, so I have my camera off. But I also, yeah, thanks for that overview of how we usually use this time to look at drafts. And I also just wanted to step back a little bit more and I think just hearing the input from community members about how our subcommittees have been working in our work groups, I just want to acknowledge, and I did this acknowledgement with the PCCEP members, I think this topic, it came to us in various forms, various avenues from the community, and then we brought it. We had a screening of the movie, of the investigation, and the reporter, and I think from there we did take it into like a work group setting to talk about next steps. And I just want to acknowledge like I think that how we move forward with the recommendation, we may have also skipped a step of getting everybody on board, all the PCCEP members on board. And that's also acknowledging that like this will probably always happen in the committee when we're, in the middle of projects and then new members come in, which we had a lot more come in, which is great and it's so exciting. But just want to step back, acknowledge that. So like, I think also opening up discussion about like moving forward with this in general. It sounds like everyone's on board, all like the PCEP members. But I just wanted to also open that up because I think we have been kind of like steamrolling it forward. It feels like, an easy recommendation. We can put it through, but also we need to just always be better at making sure that everybody in PCEP is on board for us moving forward with these kind of things. So thanks. I wanted to add that.
Thanks, Ashley. Okay, so I have this ready to share. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Okay. Should we do a read through as usual? We usually read through once.
Well, does any PCEP members have any questions about like, should we be doing this recommendation? I just feel like that's a step we have missed and
oh, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe there's no objections. I just wanted to make sure there was room for that conversation tonight too. Oh, thanks, Adelia, for putting those links. Yeah.
Maybe we have that conversation after a first read through so people can see how they feel about it if they haven't had the time to read it yet.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Thoughts?
That makes sense to me.
Makes sense. It would definitely provide the most context. Cool. Alrighty. Anyone want to read through this, or I can?
I'm happy to.
All right. Let's start. Let's do the title and then start at the summary.
Okay. PCEP recommendation to issue a formal correction and apology regarding Normandale Park shooting communications. Summary of recommendation. The Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, PCEP, recommends that the Portland Police Bureau, PPB, correct their statement about the Normandale Park shooting on February 19, 2022, as well formally apologize and acknowledge harm caused by the original incorrect statements. Body of recommendation. On February 19th, Benjamin Smith showed up to a Black Lives Matter protest with a gun. He approached a group of Quakers who exist to divert traffic and protect community members at protests. Smith approached this group and shot at them, killing one on site and gravely injuring others. A Quaker named June Knightley passed away that evening, while another, Deg, was left paralyzed from Smith's bullets and has since passed away. The group of Quakers called on an armed guard present at the protest who showed up at the scene promptly and shot Smith, ending his gunfire. June Knightley and Deg did not deserve to suffer this tragic violence and should still be alive today. First responders showed up to the scene, EMTs and police officers, and proceeded to treat the situation as an active shooting. This is understandable given the many injuries and calls to the police about a shooting. However, in the press statement to follow, PPB got their story wrong. The original press release stated that the incident started with a confrontation between an armed area homeowner and armed protesters, which incorrectly implicates the victims of the attack as equal perpetrators of violence, and additionally mischaracterizes the gunman. The release was soon picked up by news outlets and promoted false ideas about the event and those attending similar Black Lives Matter events and protests. PCCEP recognizes that the scene was incredibly chaotic and that heroic efforts were made by various community members to prevent further loss of life. We also recognize that due to the nature of these incidents, PPB may not have had all the information before issuing the press release. Correspondences between PPB and the district attorney's office indicate that PPB learned the correct story later that night or the next day, yet failed to correct the inaccurate public narrative. It is exactly this type of discrepancy that can lead to public distrust in the PPB. PCCEP appreciates that PPB has made improvements to their public information process in recent years. Most notably, the requirement that the public information officer role must now be held by a civilian. However, the initial press release about the Normandale Park shooting has still not been corrected, and to this day describes the incident as a confrontation between an armed area resident and armed protesters, while homeowner has been updated to resident, and PPB published a statement on their website acknowledging that some of the initial information the PPB disseminated to media was found to be incorrect. The statement does not acknowledge which information was incorrect. The statement also fails to mention the heroic actions of the Corkers and the community volunteers who saved lives that night due to their quick and efficient first response. As the 3-year anniversary of this tragic incident approaches, PCCEP recommends that the PPB issue a formal correction to the original press release that clearly states which information was originally reported incorrectly and that accurately reports the events that occurred. Furthermore, PCCEP recommends that PPB issue a formal apology to anyone impacted by the discrepancies reflected in the original statement and provide detailed information about what has been done internally to prevent this from happening again. We suggest that PPB acknowledge these actions at a public event, such as a press conference on the anniversary of the tragedy, in order to begin the process of repairing broken trust with the impacted community. Conclusion. The right to peacefully gather and protest is an honored tradition in Portland. The opportunities for Portlanders to safely practice their First Amendment right is often made possible by dedicated Porkers like June Knightley and Beck. As the 3-year anniversary of this tragic event approaches, PCCEP recommends that the PPB issue a formal correction to the original press release.
This is the same paragraph, sorry, Kyle, so it's, yeah. I forgot to delete it. So that was, yeah, my bad.
Or we leave it there and delete it from the body. That's what I
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
misspelled conclusion.
Yeah, or maybe, sorry, or just maybe get rid of the whole summary body conclusion structure for such a short recommendation. Cause it's weird to put maybe I'm jumping ahead, I guess, but it's weird to maybe put the call to like in theory, the conclusion, I don't know, never mind, I'm not making sense. I feel like it's maybe weird to not put the call of action in the body of the recommendation. And in that case, if we moved that paragraph, it wouldn't be in the body. But we can get there when we get there. I don't know if you're following me.
That makes sense.
Anyways, okay. Initial thoughts beyond that little hiccup.
I think this is a great version. I think it summarizes the inputs that Ashley and others had put in originally. I mean, I know that we're asking for a formal apology, and recognition of the harm caused. And we're asking them to correct, to tell us what's changed, and what failed in the system, right? Are we asking them to acknowledge anything related to specific sense, like the bias? I mean, I know that the bias of against the protesters has come up, and are we asking specifically for like a procedural explanation, or do we want to call out whether or not decisions were made more rapidly or with the inflection, or ask for clarity on that? And one of the sentences refers to the impact on of future Black Lives Matters events and such. And I feel like that's if we're claiming that's true, then but we're not really, you know, asking for confirmation. I mean, that was the effect. But do we want to know whether or not that was part of the decision making too?
Yeah,
Or
I
is
think,
that too far?
no, I think it's good to understand the process or decision to put out a release so quickly without knowing exactly everything that happened and characterizing it the way it was characterized. I think we acknowledge that there's a lot of chaos and ambiguity in the moment of something happening, but many of the reports of shootings or incidents that are put out by PPB are generally lacking a ton of information until more information is gathered on it. So frequently it's a blurb and then more information to come. So I think it makes sense to ask about the thought process of getting the details out before there was clear understanding of exactly what happened and not
Yes.
having a very or near immediate correction to it if they had put it out hastily. So I think
Yes.
understanding the process behind it is important.
And one quick thought before Devante, I pass it to you.
Yeah.
This was aggravated in me after reading their response from 2023, which just felt so disappointing in the way that it was sort of saying, well, the public wants us to get this information out. Please don't put so much pressure on us, public. And yet didn't really explain, you know, A, what was misinformation, B, what was corrected, or C, you know, like how it happened. So, okay, Devante.
Yeah. So overall, I think it's really good, but just because we're kind of talking about if we should kind of be making that deeper inquiry or that ask, it's my understanding that they because we're kind of talking about how, you know, they jump to conclusions and put out an incorrect story because of bias, but based on like the viewing of the film that we had and what the gentleman who I don't know why his name is eluding me, the individual who had put together the documentary, he had said that it was known by PPB what the actual happening was before they even released that, so that it was intentionally the incorrect information that was released. So if we were going to make that ask, would it be for them to acknowledge that they released the incorrect information and to explain or give an explanation to the public on why they still opted to release what they released, as well as, you know, speak to what was incorrect and what the correct stuff is.
Yeah. Oh, Stephanie, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just to pick up on what Devante is saying, I think I'm wondering if the group might see this as an opportunity to say, you know, invite them to come and talk about that, to give those explanations versus saying you should have a press conference about it. I'm wondering if that might not be a good way for PCEP to kind of facilitate that dialogue, but just throwing that out there. I did have another question about one aspect of this, and I just want to make sure I understand in what is being requested. So the homeowner language, clearly that's a huge, a huge piece of this, and a huge piece that needs to be acknowledged. I'm wondering, so the language that said there was a confrontation between a homeowner and an armed protester. So I just want to make sure I understand. I think what I hear you all saying, or hear this saying, is that the problem is that felt like it was characterizing this as like the protester. It maybe I should say it this way, that they didn't recognize that what the protester is not the right word, what the person in the in the crowd, the security officer, was doing was a heroic act and not an act of of just like gunfight in a protest. Am I making sense? I may not be.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think like you're correct, right? I feel like from reading the PPB statement, it sounds like there was a homeowner and a protester who both had guns and were shooting each other, and that's totally not the story. And like that is like painting these protesters as violent and all these things, when in reality it was like the other way around. So I think that's like, yes, there was an armed guard at the protest, and like what they did was like saved lives probably, so yeah, it totally is just telling the wrong story. And I think that's like the problem with that language.
That's super helpful, because I know that I know from the conversations that I've had with Chief Day and with some of the other folks that person's actions were not, in retrospect, I think should be acknowledged and would be acknowledged as heroic efforts. And so I guess what I'm saying is it sounds like that acknowledgement of the distinction of that behavior, and recognizing that person saved lives, that's an important part of what is a meaningful acknowledgement in this as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
It seems well captured in the text.
Yeah, and maybe what we'll do is, because we have to like figure out this weird end thing we did too. Maybe we can make that list like of requests like very clear, like in the way it was in Carrie's version. I know I don't know if everyone's as intimately familiar with the versions as I am, but Carrie like made like a list of like, we want this, which is good to do sometimes. So we could retool it that way. Devonte?
Yeah, so I mean, I get it. Like we're asking for, a formal apology to the people who are impacted by the misinformation. But procedurally, or just like for future reference, like how are we going to ensure that this does not happen again? Is this touching on any of that, or is this just, hey, we're asking for an apology? Like the accountability piece.
I see this.
I just need to know, what
I
is
do
the
see this as
goal?
primarily a recommendation about a moment in time and an accountability piece. Yes. That is my view of it. I don't know if others want to speak to that. I will say we do know that certain changes have been made, and maybe there's a request to acknowledge what actions have been taken more explicitly in the context of this acknowledgement.
Feel like that is, I would think that would be extremely important and meaningful to the families and the people affected, other than just getting we are sorry, we messed up. Like we're acknowledging that we messed up, and these are the things that we have worked on since then to ensure that we never put out misinformation in the way that we did, to avoid any negative impacts on the community.
Noel?
I'm gonna go ahead and talk about it too. I think, you know, what needs to be centered in all of it is absolutely the apology and the correction, because even in their last update, like, it's almost insulting. It's saying, you know, that the public and the media are the ones who wanted details right away, and you guys should have been patient, essentially. So yeah, that's part of my thought. Like, they, you know, it kind of talks about in the last, I think in the recommendation, I saw it since there was so many of them. How a person of the public is now the one who does like press releases instead of like the actual police. But you know, as it's just almost victim blaming in a way, like their last update. And I think that's overall what needs to be corrected, and not just corrected, but like acknowledged that that's something they did. You know, you can't just say, hey, I'm sorry. This is what actually happened. Like, you have to say, like, well, you have to acknowledge what's wrong with your actual last update in this, which is, you know, saying you guys should be patient. We've always worked from an objective point of view. This is something we're, you know, always doing right. Like, I think, yeah, it overall needs to be just an acknowledgement that we did something really wrong.
So Noel, you're saying in the last, in like the correction they issued, you find that some of the language used in that to be sort of like not taking accountability, sort of explicitly avoiding accountability for the incorrect statement, and that should be named.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that is not represented here yet, so I will note that. Stephanie?
Yeah, I just wanted to also just, well, maybe, and I can provide this update after, Dre. I don't want to derail the conversation, but one thing I do just want to flag is to urge this group to speak from a community voice and not necessarily try to speak on behalf of victims, right? Because there has been communications directly with the survivors, and they have conveyed what they would like to see directly to Chief Day as well. So I think the community voice is an absolutely valid voice and perspective for this. But I just want to, you know, I've told you I've been working with these groups, and I've just again met last week with some of them, and I just want to make sure that the perspective that's represented here is consistent with the community's expectations and not trying to speak for people unless they've asked you to do that for them in that more specific way. If that makes sense.
Hi, I wanted to just jump in again. So I even like looking at the conclusion of it. You know, it says furthermore, PCCEP recommends that PPB issue a formal apology to anyone impacted. And I just marked that out and put an apology to the community. Like, that's something I haven't corrected online yet, but you're absolutely right. Like, you know, we shouldn't be speaking on the victim's behalf of what they need directly, but obviously this was a rupture in trust between the police and the community. And I haven't, you know, since I'm new, I haven't heard a lot from anybody here in the meeting that's the public on their feedback from this necessarily, but you know, I've seen online the commentary about it and the responses from it, especially right after it happened, and it was awful.
Going along with that part of the thing, I'm not sure if we should suggest like where or how the PPB does it, like suggest they do a press conference. For me, I feel like then they'd be like, oh, well, PCCEP told us to do this, and if it goes wrong, like PCCEP gets blamed. I don't know. I just think it's kind of like that. I don't think that's like necessarily our job to figure that out. I don't know what other people think about that, but for me, not sure if we need to like suggest exactly how it happens, especially like on the anniversary, because that might just not be what people want to think about that day, and people might want to like grieve it in their own way and not hearing the PPB say something that could potentially be harmful again. Like we just don't know. So that's something that just crossed my mind. I'm curious what other people think.
I support the idea of not mandating a press conference. I definitely like the idea of correcting all published materials and an apology as well as part of that. But yeah, the press conference seems beyond what we would require to feel like we've resolved the situation.
Ashley?
Yeah, I just wanted to say our third that, I guess, agree that we can remove the like prescribed ways they should do this. I think that messaging of that language came from our meeting with Chief Day, the work group meeting last, I guess back in late November. And so that's something that they had brought up that they want to do. They also talked about, Chief Day also talked about coming to a public meeting at PCCEP wanted to host. So they were open to a lot of ideas. So those were just kind of like some of those ideas thrown out during that meeting. But agree with Adelia and Carrie, just I think we don't need to do that. I think it's really the recommendations about the acknowledgement and the apology. Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, I can't get my track changes to work, but we'll figure it out. Kip?
Yeah, no, I agree with the focus of the recommendation being on the apology and correction of statement. I do think I do like calling out that there was questionable practice as to why the statements were made and the framing of it. So, and we do acknowledge, wait, I think we acknowledged in this, right, that they do now have a civilian press officer, maybe that's the wrong word, press person, to work on press releases, but I don't know that that gives, thank you. I don't know that that gives enough understanding and confidence in what has changed in their methodologies to make sure that we don't have a rush to characterize an event like this in the future. So I think it'd be good to, again, not necessarily prescribe how they should respond, but ask or at least state that PCCEP would like to understand this better. And we think it's really important from everything we've heard from our community members on that.
Just another thought. I think a lot of what we're talking about right now, and like especially with the idea of like how if police say something, it's taken as truth, right? And news outlets can really like take that and go with it, and the need for there to be like truth in that, because like the snowball effect of you can say police say X and then it's just taken as truth and like when people are quoted in news stories. But I think that potentially that's like another recommendation, not saying that we have to work on that now, but just like a potential thing that maybe people are interested in is looking into like the how information is shared with the public and how that information is decided upon and what's shared. Anyways, that's like a totally separate thing, but I think some of the stuff we've talked about today would like need a lot more like digging into and looking into, and that's something I think we can do if there is interest. But yeah, that's kind of off topic, sort of.
No, I agree with that, and I think that is something that we should table and get more input on whether it's something we should formally pursue or not. But I know that I've heard input like that. So, and I was not able to make the film showing, but feedback I got on it was that that was also a major topic. So I think that's a great idea of doing.
Carrie?
It sounds like we agree about the correction and the desire for an apology. And Noel's comments were very clear on the apology that they did issue, which I also have issues with. Is that something we want to incorporate as a request? Like, why did they release the apology they did? Why was it so vague? Why didn't it have the correct information? Why did it blame the media and the public or not? I'm interested in hearing that from the committee.
That's
I
a
like
good
that.
question. Devontae, were you going to respond to that? Anyone who responses to that question, Carrie's question?
Yeah, I think maybe I didn't articulate myself clearly, perhaps, but I think that's exactly what I was trying to say. And I think Noel did a very good job of like expanding and being more concise. But my issue is that we're asking for a formal apology, but I think with any good apology, yes, you're apologizing for what you did, but also acknowledging the actions that led up to the hurt and how you're not going to do that again. I think that that's a part of the apology. So I don't think that it's necessarily a totally separate thing. I think that for this apology to be meaningful, not just to the people who were immediately impacted, but to foster trust in the community, because of clearly there's a practice or whatever led up to them, not correcting the misinformation. There's something going on, whether that's culturally or just their practices. I think that all of that can be encompassed here as a part of the apology. And I guess that's my issue, is that I don't think it's a totally separate recommendation. I think that for this to be as impactful as it should be, considering how late the community is going to be getting it, that it should all be encapsulated here.
I think it's just a matter of the writing, because I think efforts have been made to do both already. I think somewhat clearly, like in this sentence, for example, or what I've highlighted here. And then elsewhere where it like mentions some of the harm that some of the discrepancies caused, or the narratives that they promoted. But I think it's just a matter of phrasing what exactly the requests are. And then the additional question on the table currently is there a desire to add to that list of requests? Essentially, why was there a correction issued that was absolutely not a correction? That is sort of the question up for debate currently, which I'd like to hear answers to. Kip?
Yeah, I guess I'll tack on to what Devontae was saying, is that I think the accountability part as to what happened, why were the corrections still incorrect, why is it taking so long, that needs to be part of the apology and understanding, not just we're sorry, we could have done better, we will do better. The trust building is really important. I think the bigger conversation, like Odelia spoke to, and like kind of supported it on understanding the overall policy and procedures in the architecture that they hopefully put in place so that we don't have repeats might be a much larger conversation to be facilitated by us, but it should be, as you're highlighting here, should be spoken to at least that improvements are being made. But the accountability piece really needs to be in there. And like, how did this go on? How did it start out so wrong and stay so wrong for so long?
Yeah, I agree. I think that we can definitely include that. I think that it's hard, like asking for an apology always seems like a really weird thing because like if it were to happen, you would have liked for it to happen already kind of thing. But I guess this is like just a measure of accountability more and for them to acknowledge the harm that they've caused. And I see it more as like we as a community deserve that acknowledgement. And also something that's been coming up for me is that this isn't like the only instance where a statement has been incorrect and it's caused harm to people. And so I think that it's really worth like looking into even like words like homeowner and being more like, I think we can even be more explicit about the harm that that causes in a statement. And like, I think that again, like this isn't the first time this has happened, and I don't know how many times this has happened and it's gone unnoticed because there wasn't like this much press around it. And so I think that looking into the process would be something that's important and like the wording and all that. I kind of forget where I was going with this point. So, yeah.
So kind of circling around some similar points again here. I agree this recommendation is really about accountability, which is asking for an acknowledgement of mistakes made, harms done, and accepting that responsibility and identifying what went wrong and demonstrating a sincere commitment to repairing it to the extent possible and preventing it from happening in the future, right? So that's a worthwhile endeavor. I think just in the sort of narrative or structuring of this, is there agreement that we could accomplish that by being more clear with what the specific requests are, like sort of a 1, 2, 3 type thing, or is there a more serious overhaul that needs to be done?
I think just translating to actionable steps, making sure that those are at the end, the takeaway. I didn't see all the versions, so it sounds like someone already had that great idea, but I think it's all this information. We're going over history, we're going over impact and these really important pieces. And I think that, you know, the emotional and the evocative content is important and it needs to be there, but can distract if we don't really say in a very concrete way what is being requested. And I think some things too, like they have, while they may not have acknowledged it, there was enough of an issue internally for them to change their system. Their public information officer is now a civilian. That's not enough, but that is pretty big. So I think part of it too is kind of what some folks have been kind of referencing and asking for, is talking about what were the procedural systemic issues that resulted in this. And I think that maybe a way to kind of turn that into an actionable step would be to kind of ask for transparency around their internal, the way the internal process changes they made, like that, or something along those lines. That why what was the problem that you had to do this, right, internally, but not saying it in that way. They have identified some, in their words, kind of what other folks are kind of wanting to. We want them to talk about the problem that they know they had and they changed internally.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with everything you said. So yeah, I think some of what Viva just mentioned is reflected already in, Odelia pulled this over from Carrie's version. If anyone has thoughts about this initial stab at it, I don't know if the formatting translated.
I would add to my own number 4, did not honor the public with the transparency and respect or acknowledgement to the damages they deserved.
Say that again.
In addition to the transparency they deserve, they also the acknowledgement of damage done. We've talked a lot about that tonight. Or what did you say? Mistakes made, harms done.
Yeah, I think harm is a
Harm.
good word.
So Carrie does say what corrections were made. What's anything that's not covered here? I mean, I think we can work on the writing of it, or to match sort of what's reflected, and then kind of edit down what is redundant. But anything that's not reflected content wise based on the discussion we've been having.
The limitations of the correction, wasn't that a theme that came up? That it wasn't just the initial incorrect information. It sounds like folks also were pretty impacted by the effort to acknowledge that. I don't know if I don't want to push that if I'm not representing kind of what that collective discussion was accurately, but I think there was something along the lines like that when they did come out to try to address it, it didn't really do a lot. That's why we're having to ask for more. So I don't know, something around the limitations maybe of that effort.
I think that's what I heard, I think. Anyone else?
I'm much more satisfied with this.
I do think, yeah, I think it's a better approach typically for us to sort of lay out the request specifically, and also it's more actionable on the receiving end too, and that's what everyone wants. Oh yeah, I wanted to circle back. Is everyone here feeling like feeling confident about removing the sort of public I don't want to say public acknowledgement piece, but like so as sort of requested here, there's no sort of request that this be done publicly. Of course it's public if it's on a city website, but is there consensus that you want to remove that element of it, regardless of the format of delivery?
I feel like I'm talking a lot, so I'll stop here
Oh,
soon.
you're fine. You're totally fine. No one else is talking.
Yeah, I think being too prescriptive just is easier for people to say no. So I think I think there, in my personal opinion, it has to be public, right? Like for it to be effective, like that is a necessary component. I think the being too prescriptive in the time and the place, or like the how, is might not be as effective. And I think if we are worried that it won't be done in a thoughtful or validating way, that maybe we could include an like kicking it back to be determined by, so that they can work with the victims to identify the best methods or something, you know, the best delivery, something that we're not dictating that. But if I think removing it's okay. And I think that I don't want to be naive because I'm not as experienced in some of this processes. So if there is concern that we do need to be prescriptive for it to happen, that maybe that we identify the folks that could determine the best way to do it.
Just a note on that, I think like Stephanie was sharing, I think that a lot of people in the city, including Stephanie and Chief Day, have done that and have met with like families and folks harmed. I'm not sure to what extent or if everyone wanted that who was like present, but I'm not sure if, like, I think they already have taken that step is what I'm trying to say, I guess.
The question being in the context of the action yet to be taken with the correcting of the record, should that be done publicly, or should there be a request for that to be done publicly? Also on the, I think possibly worth just adding one other point for consideration. Possibly worth your consideration. Stephanie had made the point about not speaking from the victim's perspectives. Nothing jumps out to me, but that might be something to read for, is making sure that this is speaking from a community perspective about the injustice done from a procedural standpoint, a structural standpoint about, you know, we want our police force to communicate this way, to reflect the truth this way. This is the standard that we have. When something happens, this is how we want to get information about it. And if something goes wrong, this is how we want it to be corrected. So just kind of thinking with that sort of distance about it. And if that's the case, and that's what you're asking for, then I don't know if you need to be too concerned about, well, I don't want to say what you should be concerned about, but then this should not be a document or a request that is speaking for the victims and should be timed with, or I don't know. It should stand alone from that, I guess, is what I'm trying to say in a convoluted way. I don't know if that's making any sense. I feel like it didn't. Ashley.
Well, yeah, I think speaking to that, yeah, I think, and I think Stephanie put it well too, just let's like speak for the community, not for the victims, which I know is also the same, but and I was thinking about this too as we were drafting the recommendation, and tying it to there's, proposed permanent memorial for the victims at the park, which is being set up and organized and coordinated by the city. And I think that's happening outside of this. And I think our homework, or our, what we're sort of tasked to do is just make sure that, yeah, we're speaking for the community. We've done several checkpoints in on this, and so that's why we've come to this conclusion, make a recommendation. So yeah, that made sense to me, Dory. And then I was raising my hand because I wanted to mention how the current language about PCCEP recommends that PBB issue a formal apology to the community, and then we suggest the PBB acknowledge these actions as a public event, at a public event. I think that's good wording because, we're not saying how to have that public event. So maybe if they decide to do it at the memorial, will be their prerogative. But we're asking, we're saying that this apology does need to happen in public. That is an important part of it. But we don't, you can, do, we don't have to say how they do that.
What about publicly instead of public event? And I'm not pushing that. I'm just want to kind of get a temperature check of the sentiment around that.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I think that widens the net more.
It's a good suggestion, Kip.
Yeah, I was going to, that's why I was saying earlier, I think the focus on this recommendation is important because kind of the input we have and general consensus that there are some egregious missteps here, and that's the kindest way to put it. But in the larger sense on what has truly changed policy-wise, how things are vetted and promoted, and how when they do get something wrong, something is corrected from a policy standpoint. I still feel like that's an opportunity, like Odelia was saying earlier, to pursue that within the committee, because what I think I'm hearing from the folks here and in previous meetings, that is a desirable thing to understand. So I still think there's this piece of it, which I think is important to ask for and talk about and get an explanation for, but also how do we go forward? What has changed, and what policies are different? So I do see them as separate things.
Separate from the internal assessments.
Related but separate, yeah.
What about number 4?
That's a big, I mean, as it pertains to this particular incident, which is now coming up on 3 years old, I think would be good to understand specifically on this. But I think we have a general understanding that is missing also about the, what's the word I'm looking for? Frameworks that should be in place to prevent these things in the future. So I don't, I think there's a smaller is the wrong way to frame it. I'm sorry, it's been a really long day, but I think there's a constrained thing to understand what happened here, what went wrong, and why things haven't been updated and how they're going to fix that. And then there's a bigger question on what has intrinsically changed to make sure this doesn't happen again. And there are other instances of mischaracterizations or information not being particularly relevant or updated in a timely manner, but nothing that quite stands out to this level.
Not sure if I can bullet point that.
Yeah, well, I don't
I
know that
do
we put it in
feel,
this, but I
as
think we
far
need
as
to
action
table it
goes,
for
I do
future.
feel like it's captured in 4 currently, if we're good to,
Okay.
I'm not, let me know if I'm missing anything or if I should, what I should write specifically. Think on it, Devonte.
Yeah.
Back in up, we scroll back up the portion where it's asking for PPB to issue a formal apology. Where is it?
Here.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, I'd be interested to know what everyone else thinks about this, but a formal apology to anyone impacted by the discrepancies. I mean, I wonder if that shouldn't just say to the community.
We are coming full circle, or some other better phrase, because this paragraph exists twice and we made that exact edit.
Oh.
So
Gotcha.
the good news is that you all are really in sync right now.
Okay. My bad.
No, that's great. Yep. And yeah, I think this is gray because it's deleted, but it's just showing up weird.
Long day, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, we're all getting to that point, which is about the right time. Okay, so last comments from this drafting session. I think we're kind of narrowing in on it. Like any big things we should consider making changes on before we make all these revisions and bring it back next week and likely get it to a place where we'd want to vote on it. I'm not hearing anything. So I do think this is a good time to hear public comment. And so we can hear public comment. I guess it's whatever people prefer. We would like to hear public comment about the document itself and then also have open public comment. We can kind of combine the two, or we can do them distinctly, whatever people prefer. We can do it distinctly. We have enough time. Does that work for everyone? Okay, so now we'll open it up to members of the public. We'll have around 5 to 7 minutes of public comment if we have that much, about any comments or questions you'd like PCCEP to consider on this version of the draft. So if you have any comments, you can raise your hand at this time. Barbara?
Hi, Barbara Bashinsky, she, her, Portland Cop Watch. I would like to just point out that, and I don't know if you need to say this to them, but remember that slide deck, the infamous slide deck? That not only had the dirty hippie slide, it also showed Black demonstrators as being violent compared to white demonstrators being peaceful. And I'm wondering if that kind of training, they really need to do some training on that. Because when you have that basic idea, then that can kind of lead to this sort of situation and not maybe people not questioning, people in the police department not questioning what went on. And then as far as the media, I sort of feel like the media need to be involved. And I don't know if you guys can have anything to do with that. One thing is I just looked up on Wikipedia. I looked up the Normandale shooting. And they have the wrong story there, that he confronted armed protesters and they did not have anything about the security guard. I would change it, but I don't feel like I should do it as an individual. And then I think the acknowledgement and apology should be done publicly, and that the news media who printed the false reports from the police should be asked to cover the apology. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. And again, just hearing comments about the recommendation right now, we'll have open public comment after this if you have comments not about the recommendation.
Okay.
Babs?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I did put some comments in the chat, so I'll be brief, and I see Dan has his hand up also. And my comments were, first of all, it's never too late to ask for an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. I agreed with points that Devonte and Noel made, that an apology, just saying we're sorry, doesn't hold as much impact as acknowledging that there was wrongdoing. That's a different thing. And then focus on corrective action moving forward. Past. What are you going to do now to prevent this from happening in the future? And I think in the discussion, those points were addressed well. Thank you. I may make another comment later on something else, but let's, it looks like Dan is the other hand.
Thanks, Babs.
You bet.
Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, hi again, Dan Handelman, Portland Cop Watch. I put something in the chat before referring to an earlier PCCEP recommendation that Barb R. actually commented on as well, because she remembers it too, where they wanted, the PCCEP wanted the mayor to apologize to families who had lost their loved ones to police violence, and the city kind of made them say, oh, they have to acknowledge that it happened and not apologize, because there's legal implications when you say I'm sorry that could open the city up to lawsuits. And I'm sort of surprised we haven't heard from the city attorney on this. But so just the last comment that Babs made, I think that's probably a good idea to focus more on the acknowledgement of the damage that was done without necessarily asking for the specific words. I apologize. There's actually a whole episode of, I think it's I can't remember the name of the show. It was a show on NPR about the difficulties of issuing an apology in this legal system that we have. So I just wanted to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Interesting. Thanks, Dan. JD?
Yeah, hi, this is Jake. First of all, thanks for everybody. I saw the comment from Kip about how hard this work is, and I agree and really appreciate all of your dedication to getting it done. It's really valued. And I came in a little bit late, so I apologize if I missed it and was trying to catch up and read. Is there language in this apology that specifically it appears to be focused on kind of the PIO statements? And I was wondering if it also covers the statements that were made in the following days by now former Chief Lavelle, and is it specifically focused on the Public Information Office, or is it like focused on Chief Lavelle or just the Police Bureau in general?
Currently, it is focused on that press release correspondence.
Yeah, I think that that's a good point, and that we can kind of clarify that it was more than just that. And like Chief Lavelle did have like make a statement that was also incorrect after they did have like the information that was verified by the conversation with the DA and the PPB. So I think Devonte spoke to that earlier, and that was something I couldn't remember today, but I think maybe we can include that a little more too, to make sure this isn't something that could just be pinpointed on like this old system that we no longer have anymore, and that it's like more than just that. So yeah, I think we can add that. I'll write it down so we don't forget.
Great. Any other comments about the recommendation? Okay, thank you, PCCEP and members of the public. That was a really productive work session, and I'm confident we can get that to a polished place by next week, and we'll take another look at it. Alrighty, so I think we're ready for open public comment. Just about 6 minutes left here. Yeah, so if you have any comments about anything that came up in the meeting, any business we didn't get to, or anything else that falls under PCCEP's big umbrella, now is the time, so please raise your hand and we will call on you. Mark.
Yep. Hi. Thanks everybody for being here. Mark Porras, he, him pronouns. I'm a member of Portland Cop Watch. I'm going to just drop the link to the city status report to Judge Simon in the chat. And I just wanted to point out that in the city's status report, there's no mention of mental illness. And as we all know, the US v. City of Portland case came about because of PPP's unconstitutional use of force against individuals with actual or perceived mental illness. And so I just wanted folks to see that, read that, and I would expect more from the city, and I would expect status reports to include how we're doing better in that regard. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Babs.
I just noticed that someone named KM has their hand up, and that person hasn't spoken before. So I'm wondering if we should allow that person to go before me. That's
KM,
fine.
would you like to go ahead? You're welcome to.
Sure, yeah. My name's Kat Mahoney. I'm an attorney in Portland. I am the former executive director of Sisters of the Road. And I was a legal observer from 2017 until 2023. I had folks at Normandale Park that night observing the protests, observing the setup, and they were there when this happened. And one of the things in your document, I mean, I think your document is very strong. I think it's come to a really amazing place. And I'm glad that there is an organization of people who are trying to hold the city accountable for mistakes they make, and also give them guidance on how they can be better, do better, and regain trust or regain something from this city after how many years and decades and possibly generations of people not trusting the police for tons of reasons. And sometimes it's the color of your skin, sometimes it's your economic background, sometimes it's all the above. The one thing you have in there, though, that I have a really big problem with is you call the person who was able to shoot Ben Smith, you call him an armed guard. He wasn't a guard. He was a protester. Some of the protesters had, I'll just say they had a gun or they had a weapon on them because of a self-defense aspect, because we, myself included, were getting death threats anytime we went to a protest. We were told we were going to be shot. We were told we should be killed. We were told these things. So some folks started bringing that to protect us. He wasn't necessarily a guard, but he was a participant who had that on him. So I would strongly suggest finding a different word because it makes him sound like a soldier. And then that also then pushes forward the narrative that Antifa has soldiers and all that militaristic crap that we've been seeing for how many years. And then it also creates the narrative of like, oh, these are dangerous people who wear black at night. And then that also brings in the unconscious thing that black is dangerous. So can we get away from that? And that's the only thing I really want to say about this. Otherwise, thank you so much.
Yeah, if I could just respond to that really quick. Thanks, Kat, for bringing that up. I was the one who wrote that, and I think that's because of the language I heard used in the documentary, and the things you said didn't even cross my mind. So I appreciate you for holding us to that, and we will definitely change that language. So thank you.
Go ahead, Babs.
Okay, thank you so much again. I just wanted to make, since we're talking about the new city council and the new city transition, I just wanted to make sure that all of you know that the City Club is sponsoring meet and greets in all 4 districts. So wherever you live, it's an opportunity. You're nodding, Dory. Maybe people know about this already. It's a chance to see your city council members in your district up close and personal. And for those of you who might live in North and Northeast Portland, that's District 2. The first one is next Tuesday, the 28th. And the information is on the City Club of Portland's website. Thank you. I'm still also wondering, I don't know if we'll have time now for Stephanie.
Go ahead.
Yeah, to tell us about your new role, dear, please. Thank you.
Is now good, Tori? Okay, just so I'll be really quick because I see Dan's hand. So yeah, my new role, I'm excited. I get to still be involved with PCCEP and supportive. I will be one of the folks on the city team that will be continuing to be engaged in the DOJ settlement agreement and the self-monitoring efforts that will go into that. So it's specifically to PCCEP. So I'm really happy and excited that I get to continue to be involved with that. And in addition to still kind of serving as a point of contact for PPB types of issues and working with PPB's leadership, I also am going to get to work more directly with the Office of Violence Prevention, our Portland Ceasefire Program, and Portland Street Response. So I'm really super excited about getting to do all of those things. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, so Stephanie now works over, moved over from the council side of things over into the same service area where PCCEP is housed, actually. Yeah. All right, Dan.
Hi, one more time, Dan Handelman, Portland Cop Watch, he, him pronouns. First of all, I'm going to drop in the chat a link to our most recent newsletter, which came out at the end of December. It's online now. You can look at it with graphics and stuff. There's always articles about the DOJ settlement and PCCEP in there. Also, I think I brought this up at your last meeting, but now it's much more urgent. The establishment of the new oversight system, which was something that you talked about quite a bit for the city council vote on the new code, is under a timeline from the judge. He gave the city 30 days to come up with each of the 4 districts have to pick one person to sit on the nominating committee for who's going to sit on that board. The other people on that nominating committee are 2 members of the Citizen Review Committee, a person from the Office of Equity and Human Rights, and 3 people that are named by the police, the chief, the police association, the police commanding officers association. So as far as I know, and even this is from information that we got today, as far as we know, there's been no application created in any of the 4 districts that say, if you want to apply to be our representative on the new nominating committee, please apply here. It's very complicated to try to create one from the community standpoint because we don't want to make it sound like we're the ones asking for the help. It's the city districts that need to ask for that help. So I'm hoping that you can help make sure that that happens, that there's some kind of formal application, especially because now the deadline is February 6th, I believe, and that's coming up very fast. And finally, I try really hard to do analysis that's about institutions, and I'm sure this is going to hurt feelings, and I don't mean it in any way or shape or form to be against individual or any people, because there are good motivations behind all this that's happened. But I've come to you before and said, when there's a police officer in the room, call them by their rank, say Sergeant Jones or whatever, so that people know the power dynamic in the room. If I walked into this meeting not knowing what was going on, I would think that your staff person was a member of the group, because the staff person keeps referring to we and offers an opinion. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think it should be clear to people participating from the community watching their meeting, who's the staff and who's the members of the committee, because it wasn't really, that line gets blurred and it's kind of confusing about who got appointed to sit on this committee by the city council and who's helping you get your work done in a very great way. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not trying to be insulting. I just want to make sure that you understand that it's very confusing if you don't know what's going on. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Dr. Allen.
Hi, Elizabeth Allen, she, her, they, them. I have something to say that's very much like what Dan said, but on a completely different subject. I want to go back to the subject of the guard. That was a case of things being confusing if you didn't know what was going on when you read it. So confusing that the word guard was used when in fact it was a participant who was guarding other participants. The whole question of why that participant brought a gun was told to us just now, but there were no words put in such a way that it's likely to show up in what is written. The whole question of why somebody brought a gun and the threats to people's lives hasn't been included in how people are writing. And that means if you don't know what's going on, you're just left out of the loop as to why somebody had a gun there. So I would never have known if KM hadn't spoken. And I think she needs to say it all again. I'm not sure that she needs to say anything new, but it just needs to be included. I don't think we can write what we're talking about writing without including it.
Thank you. All right. I think that's all the public comment we have and our last agenda item. So with that, I will hand it back to Kip to close the meeting out.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Dory. Thank you, everyone. Again, I put it in chat, but this is hard work, and I appreciate everybody sticking with it and bringing good intentions and having honest conversations. So it's a big deal. Our next meeting is next Wednesday, January 29th. It sounds like we are likely to postpone our elections till after the retreat we have. But we'll have an agenda out, hopefully a couple days at least before the next meeting. And beyond that, I do want to add one thing from I'll try to only take a minute, but one thing from the Judge Simon hearing. We did hear from community members that actually, I guess I did talk to it, that we've been inconsistent in recent months due to staffing challenges, due to different things changing and moving around. And it's definitely something that we've talked about internally getting much better at. And I think including with that is more heads up sooner about what our agendas are and what topics and getting feedback. So I'm hoping through the retreat process, we're going to have a really good plan to start relating to everybody. So I appreciate all the criticisms as well that we've heard. So, but beyond that, I don't have anything else.
Yeah, just briefly, next week's agenda will be up as usual, by tomorrow, with at the very least, we will be finalizing this recommendation in theory. Sounds like we'll have a little more space than anticipated, so some of the updates and other pieces might shift a bit. But that you can at least expect as usual by tomorrow. And then other PCCEP folks, especially those newer to the recommendation process, just so you're aware, we will recirculate this draft to you, and then to kind of avoid, not that our new members were responsible for this, but to avoid the avalanche of versions right before the meeting, feel free to kind of comment on the draft in review mode or comment mode prior to the meeting, and then we'll kind of get that looking good. And we will kind of do this whole thing again. But yeah, so you can expect both of those things tomorrow, and PCCEP members, the version of the recommendation that we just worked on to you tomorrow. Okay, and with that, thank you all for sticking around a little bit late, and thank you so much for being here for our first meeting of the year. We're gonna do good work this year, and a lot of big things ahead, clearly. So appreciate all of you, and good to see everyone in 2025. And it is 8:09 p.m. and I think we can say this meeting is adjourned.